From the CBS Bay Area studios, this is KPIX 5 News.
Right now on CBSN Bay Area, a tsunami advisory still in effect tonight for the entire U.S. West Coast. Is it posing a threat to the Bay Area?
And hundreds of East Bay residents heading back home tonight, while some say the evacuation was a big surprise.
Plus, we speak to an expert who says there is a possibility another eruption could occur. Thank you for joining us. I'm Juliette Goodrich.
And I'm Brian Hackney, looking live over the coast almost 24 hours after a blast detected around the world sent a tsunami racing toward the west coast. The tsunami advisory is still in effect tonight. All this after an undersea volcano produced a blast so loud it was heard all the way to Alaska. And now at 6 o'clock tonight, people are still being cautioned to stay off the beaches as ripples in the ocean continue to wash up on shores from China to the United States. It all began at 8:27 p.m. Pacific time last night near the island kingdom of Tonga. An undersea volcano active for days suddenly blew sky high, sending a terrific plume of steam and ash 12,000 feet high and 3 miles wide. Water and small rocks rained out over the Tongan capital 40 miles away. With a tsunami strafing Tonga's largest island, even their king had to evacuate his palace. Many families from Tonga live in San Mateo County, and they have been utterly cut off from their loved ones back home. That blast happened around dinner time in Tonga, sending tsunami waves up and over the most populated islands. Images posted on Facebook show people being driven from their homes, and then nothing. Shortly after the eruption, internet service was abruptly cut off and remains so tonight. A Tongan pastor at a San Carlos church says that reports he got from family and friends were terrifying.
They say they never saw anything like that. It was like black rain coming down from the sky, and they found out later the little rocks. You can grab them from on top of your car and hold it. We still believe that something good is gonna come out, Yeah. And that's our prayer all night last night, that God will protect our little island, which we love so much.
Because communications are all shut down tonight, many Tongans say they are extremely worried because they haven't been able to reach their loved ones. About 100,000 people live on that island alone.
We have an update tonight. The tsunami advisory forcing more than 100 people to evacuate from the Berkeley Marina this morning. But that order was just lifted, according to Alameda County OES. But they are still warning people to use caution on boats and on docks. Now, earlier, KPIX 5 Sean Chitness spoke to some of those who were asked to evacuate and learned more about why that particular spot had experts concerned about the potential impact.
Traffic is moving again here along University Avenue at the Berkeley Marina. Police closed off the street in the morning as that tsunami advisory was just beginning to make sure people were kept a safe distance away, as well as allow experts to study the waves along the shore. Just after 7 in the morning, residents at the marina got an earlier start to their Saturday than they planned.
They drove by with the patrol boats and also walked up and down the docks with loudspeakers telling us to evacuate immediately.
About 10% of the boats have people here who live on board. Berkeley police evacuated around 115 residents.
First time for everything.
Some have lived here for more than 20 years. They said the water was calmer today than other times when they were still able to stay in their boats.
Usually if there's a storm, you feel something. This is placid water.
To help residents ride out the tsunami advisory away from their homes, the American Red Cross came here with supplies and stayed on the marina while they waited to go back to their boats.
We're always here to help people in any kind of need, especially for the folks like here today in the Berkeley Marina, if they need some assistance.
The California Geological Survey was on site observing the water to see what the impact might be. They noticed at least 3 surges in the waves, even making a subtle whirlpool in the water that visitors may not have noticed otherwise.
I've seen a couple boats try to come into the harbor like 3 or 4 times, and they just turn around and go back out because the currents are too strong.
Staff left without reporting any major issues, but the potential for damage to property and danger to people nearby required them to study the scene.
The Marina office called my husband and said that it was going to be several more hours before we were allowed back down onto the docks.
Reporting in Berkeley, Sean Chitness, KPIX 5.
And this just in, video of a surfer who had to be rescued tonight about 300 feet offshore at San Francisco's Ocean Beach. Park rangers say he's okay. He is being evaluated for non-life-threatening exposure to the cold water. Rescuers say the waves were so strong they broke apart his surfboard. And we got lots of new video showing big waves, not necessarily associated with the tsunami, because we did have high tides at the same time. Almost coincident with the arrival of the tsunami wave was high tide, so it's hard to tell the difference between the two, except for that video that Darren showed you. But along the Bay Area coastline today, video from the North Bay with waves hitting the Sonoma County coast. And video from Bodega Bay. You can even see a boat out there. Actually being outshore is fairly safe for a boat in a tsunami, but it was being tossed around by some of the waves. A lot of people watching all of the waves slam against the coast, which is not a brilliant idea during a tsunami advisory. Here's some wild shots out of Pacifica. Waves crashing right over that seawall. The water spilling right onto the roadway, and you can see the car getting splashed as it goes by. Jules?
And Marin County also saw some minor flooding this morning. Streets were flooded near the Yellow Ferry Harbor in Sausalito. And police were at the dock. They were warning houseboat owners and pedestrians to be careful of the waves and to stay clear of the beaches, campgrounds, and low-lying areas. But some residents had this fear.
It was high tide at 9:30, so we're more concerned about those pilings. If it had been more water and if the docks could come up over the tops of those pilings. But as you can see, we've got plenty of ways to go there.
And we're not the only ones feeling the effects of the tsunami. In fact, here is some new video out of Orange County tonight. Massive waves crashing along the Southern California shore. Deputies from Orange County PD were at the beach asking people to keep their distance from the water. In Redondo Beach, fishermen at the Redondo Harbor are being forced to keep their boats docked tonight as the tsunami advisory remains in effect for California.
I'd mentioned that this all happened totally coincidentally right at the time of high tide this morning in the Bay Area, and Darren's going to break that down for us. Darren.
We're going to go back to high tide, which was at 8:45 this morning, which it just happened to be the exact time the biggest wave energy from the tsunami got here. And I think this video probably drives home the point more than anything else we've seen today about how unexpected things can turn. That's Soquel Creek. The ocean is that way. In fact, this is just upstream from Capitola Beach. The beach is almost just out of view there. This is supposed to be a creek flowing that way, and this video was shot at 8:45 when, with high tide and the added surge of the tsunami, the creek started flowing backwards, upstream. So when we talk about unexpected things coming seemingly out of the blue, that drives the point home, I think, probably more than anything. Let me show you how this occurred. This is a way of gauging high tide in addition to wave energy. The blue line shows you what we know high tide was supposed to be today. The red line shows you what the wave heights actually were. Look at the convergence right there. The tsunami comes just at high tide at 9 o'clock this morning. That's why this was a problem. It's because the timing worked out just right. Here's why we're not done. The wave heights there are still exceeding the expected height by a foot. And that's the criteria for a tsunami advisory. We will be under a tsunami advisory until the wave heights dip below a foot higher than what the tide tell us it should be for 3 straight hours. And at this point, we're not even close to that. And high tide's coming back tonight at about 11:45. So we still have to watch this closely for the next several hours. That's why it says until further notice on the tsunami advisory. I'll see you with the rest of the forecast in a bit. Brian, back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Darren. New at 6. This tsunami advisory might have been something of a surprise to wake up to for a lot of us this morning. It was to me. I spoke with volcanologist Wendy Stovall today about just how far and wide the effects of the eruption and the tsunami really reached.
Fortunately, the volcano itself is relatively shallow, so the amount of water that was likely displaced during the eruption was not a huge amount. It is surprising that it reached the West Coast. The simple physics of it are really unlikely for anything like that to happen. But yes, it did reach the West Coast. The eruption was very powerful. There are reports that it was heard as far as Alaska.
Wow.
There were sensors that picked it up around the world. Not just seismic sensors, but sensors that measure sound that is inaudible to the human ear.
Wendy did mention there is always the possibility there could be a big or bigger eruption from the same source. That would be bad news for Tonga, but the West Coast at least would have 11 hours of warning before any subsequent tsunami.